This Choircast podcast is brought to you by Everly and the Little Red Door, written by Danica L. Rogie and illustrated by Jess Hopt. Join Everly and her friends as they explore the fairy world and learn what it means to be a wanderer, explorer, imaginer, dreamer, believer, and good story gatherer. I wrote this children's book to remind kids that being curious and imaginative make life an adventure, and at the end of the day, they hold the power to make their own magic. Everly and the Little Red Door is available now on Amazon or wherever books are sold.
The majority of our life is lived in liminal space.
And there's this in-between space, this liminal space.
This liminality that reveals possibility.
I think we're in a liminal moment, but also in a place of transformation. We could actually change as a people.
I have great affection for the church and a troubled relationship with it.
That can't be the gospel because God said to love our neighbors.
Just to be alive in time means that we're on the threshold of the future.
Just to begin questioning is so difficult because you have these voices in your ears telling you that you're not a real Christian.
We don't know what the future looks like. We have to work it out together.
Kathy, welcome back to the Liminal Living Podcast. It's great to have you here.
It's great to be back.
It's been a little while. Some things have happened.
A few things, yeah.
Just a few things, yeah. A couple things here and there. Now, last we talked, I remembered that you were a big fan of coffee and Cafe Bustelo and espresso.
Yes.
And I was a fan of kind of coffee, but not espresso, but you converted me.
Oh.
I eventually went and got a mocha pot.
Yes.
The tabletop espresso one. I found it in an antique store and I remembered our conversation.
Yeah.
And said, oh, I want to have espresso now.
Yes.
And so I got it, and I've been having espresso probably for about a year now. And so you converted me over to espresso from coffee.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah, I don't actually have a drip coffee maker on the counter. I only pull it out when I know that there are going to be many, many guests. Otherwise, it's an espresso maker on top of the cabinet or on top of the counter.
Yeah, we have a drip one that's under the counter for when my mother-in-law comes over because she needs a pot of coffee.
Oh, okay.
And she drinks until 9 p.m. of the coffee and then switches over to wine later on. And I said, I can't drink coffee past, well, what time is it? Yeah, past now.
Yeah.
I'll be up all night. But my wife has a French press and I bring her a French press coffee in the morning. And then I have my espresso little mocha pot and I have my espresso in the morning. And yeah, you changed my life.
I love that. I love that.
We were kind of talking beforehand. I've talked to a lot of people on the podcast the last 3 years about deconstruction and what we're deconstructing, just trying to make sense of things. I think a lot of us in the church spaces, especially evangelicalism in Western spaces, kind of were really shocked about what we were seeing in the political landscape ever since 2015 and just thinking, I have no idea what's going on. But after having conversations about the ingredients in the cake we were baking, and the ingredients often were authoritarian leadership. It's like, oh yeah, pastors just be all, end all, say all, just follow the man, patriarchy, kind of that supremacy, whiteness, colonialism. There was a whole bunch of stuff in the cake that kind of people growing up in the West just never saw. And now that I've had these conversations, I'm like, oh, of course this is where we are because look at the ingredients we've been baking. And you're one of the people that helped me kind of identify some of those things. So yeah, just thank you for helping me see things better.
You're welcome.
So I've been having a lot of those conversations of deconstruction and trying to help people who are in deconstruction have a sense of safety and like, okay, this is normal. This is okay. This is actually what progression looks like and maturity looks like. This is okay. And I thought we could have conversations this fall about like reconstructing and putting something back together because after you deconstruct, it seems like the world, it just kind of gets flat and you're like, yeah, I used to think that God was this all-controlling force that could come in and save me, often didn't, and that confused me, but now I understand that's not it. Okay, so then what is true? And so I'm just trying to have some conversations around re-enchanting the world or reimagining God for the modern world. When I say those words, re-enchanting or reimagining, what sparks in you? What are you thinking about these days in that realm? Do you got any thoughts rolling around about how you're making the world a little more magical around you?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I love that word, re-enchanting. And I've heard that concept of reimagining, like what should the new whatever it is going to look like? And when I think about what wasn't allowed or what wasn't first and foremost was really the joy of being loved and loving. And because isn't that what we say God is? God is love. And I just think that especially now when people are constantly referring to the divisions in the world, I keep going back to, well, if God is love, what does that mean? How do I live my life? How should that be reflected in me as I interact with people who may have very different opinions about lots of things with me? What does that look like? What does that look like to be somebody who walks in the security of knowing she is loved and she has the capacity for that same love of others? And I do think that in that it brings me a little bit of lightness in all of the craziness that's going on in the world today, particularly in the United States, but not limited to. I mean, there's lots of things going on in the world that we can carry the both and. We can be very aware of what's happening in the world, in our country, in our neighborhood. We can grieve for that. We can be angry. We can want things to be different. And we can love people and find joy in that. And I think for me, that continues to be this exercise of living in that tension and rejecting binaries.
Yeah. The binaries is really what gets you, because when you hear one of those like trigger words,
right,
either side, all of a sudden your brain does all these backflips and assumptions and says, oh, you're one of those. And then just shuts the door on conversation and maybe the door needs to be shut in that moment because you could experience a little, something violent against you. But it's a knee-jerk reaction these days. And it's really hard to have ongoing friendships and conversations, relationships, when they are the ideological opposite of where you are. And it's really, I'll talk with some folks I've known for years, and we'll have political conversations, and I'll give my, list of grievances with where we currently are. And they'll say, well, that's funny that you bring those up because that's exactly how I felt during the Biden stretch or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but how could you? Like, you're not experiencing, ICE raids and violence and all these other things. But whether or not that is a true statement, it's their emotion of how they're interpreting the event and showing up for them and trying to help them see where we actually are, but also see maybe there's, 25% truth in what they're talking about because, Biden wasn't a saint. I wasn't 100% happy with him, but Lord have mercy, where we are now it's really hard to be in this space and have conversations like that without doing those backflips in your mind of automatic assumptions, shut you down, close the door, walk away, and I'm done. So joy and love seem to be, how would you exercise it in that moment? Maybe, you get that word and then all of a sudden the doors want to close. How do you safely keep them open for an ongoing conversation? Or at least discern if it's a safe place to have that conversation.
Yeah, I've been having this specific conversation over and over and over. And I do think that the challenge these days is to discern whether or not that person is engaging with you in good faith, in that it's actually a conversation and it's questioning and asking for clarification, as opposed to, I can't believe you believe X. What an idiot you are.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's never going to get me anywhere. And for me, it's even more than that. It's knowing that on social media, or, you overhear somebody, or you discover that somebody has a very strong feeling about something that you never knew.
Mm-hmm.
This may be somebody you have been friends with for years. I was actually thinking about, so last night I was flying back from Los Angeles, and as we were boarding the plane, the captain was greeting all of the passengers, and he is, I guess now, 20 days from retirement. And, just being really grateful and thankful. He loves what he does. And he struck up a conversation with the people in front of me, and he said, "Oh yeah, I went to the Charlie Kirk Memorial." And my stomach went, like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to take a deep breath. I wasn't going to engage him in a conversation, but what I automatically felt in my body and in my mind was like, oh, I cannot believe I am on this plane with somebody who is da-da-da-da-da-da. And I could feel that anger in my body. And what I needed to do was, as I was boarding the plane and taking deep breaths, trying to find where I was going to put my luggage, I had to remember God loves this man and God loves me. Period. And so how do I need to change, reteach my body not to react in that fight mode, and more in a, what does it mean that we are both loved by the same God, that we are both created in God's image, and come clearly from a very different perspective on what's going on in the world. And yet here, I am trusting my life in his expertise.
Right.
That probably happens more, right? Like day to day, I think that probably happens more to us than we know. And so, in terms of that interaction, I think that most of the people we interact with, we are not having and will not have the opportunity to have those conversations. It's somebody we know in passing. It's a relative we don't see very often. It's a distant friend that we're staying in touch with via social media. I just don't know if humanly we have the capacity to have all of those conversations with all of those people. But I realized last night as I was getting on the plane, like, oh, I actually need to do a lot in terms of changing my immediate reaction before I even try to engage in conversation. Because I right away was like, I'm ready for a fight. Why?
Yeah.
I was boarding a plane.
Right. I was driving to work today and having an argument in my head with somebody that wasn't there. I don't know if you've ever done that, but it just this whole conversation with a person that I actually know was just happening in my head. I haven't even talked to them about it, but for some reason it was going in my head. And then all of a sudden, like, I had to interject a statement that interrupted my thought process. And the statement that I said was, it was, "You are more than your ideas that I disagree with, and I love that you." And that was, it kind of interrupted that whole fight or flight response inside of me that was happening.
Right.
even though it wasn't actually happening. It was all imaginary anyways. But that phrase just came to mind out of nowhere today. And I was like,
Yeah.
yes. When I don't know the person's ideas, I'm able to love them. Can I still love them when I learn their ideas? That's when the challenge to love your enemy, ideological enemy, comes into play, I think. And that's where the hard work is. Can we love the people that are ideologically different than us, even if their ideals are very harmful to where we currently are in a political ideology? That's really difficult. It's really, really hard. But that, I like what you say about have to teach your body to react differently in those moments instead of doing what you want it to do. Because real life is not a social media comment section. It's like we actually have to be with people.
Right.
Oh, that's really interesting. I like that. Got me thinking.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Oftentimes when we deconstruct, we're kind of left with a flat, I don't trust spiritual experience anymore. Or I don't know what I can trust. You're left with a very suspicious outlook on any kind of enchanted experiences that you could have. Like you're driving, is like, oh, was that God? No, that's what I used to think was God, but then deconstructed, and now it's really just, that was just my ego talking, and I'm trying to put together, like, how does the reenchantment work if we are going to have more of an embodied theology, not just ideals in our heads, but you said you're going to teach your body to react in these ways. How do you think, like, the concept of God interacts with this physical world in order to teach us differently? Because it used to be like the ideas in my head, he's the voice in my head, or God is the giving me the ideas in my head or the inspirations in my head, and then I'm supposed to go and do something with those. And then I found out, oh, maybe it wasn't God talking to me, it was my ego or all those things. Like, how can we have a sense of like an embodiment experience of God? Does anything come to mind when I talk about that, like reenchanting and embodying faith out of ideas realms and experiencing the divine in that way? What comes to mind when you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that idea of binaries and really having been raised in a kind of faith culture that said, ministry or missions looks like this. So this is holy and this is secular. This is Christian. This is non-Christian. So if you're a Christian, you do these 5 things. But if you're a non-Christian, you don't care about what you do. And that's a continued work in me in trying to shed and question those binaries that I grew up in and lived within. And that idea of what does it mean to embody God's love and goodness in the world? And not just on Sundays, and not just when I talk with other Christians. What does it mean to be somebody whose presence is that of somebody who knows and is secure in God's love? That should be radically different. And so, I left ministry in 2019 and kind of floated around. I knew that my writing was a type of ministry, and yet that still felt very much within the Christian space. My readers are Christians, or they are at least on a spiritual journey. And so that embodiment part comes in this new life of mine as a yoga teacher and a fitness instructor, which I never in a million years would have thought I would have moved and added fitness instruction to it. But my philosophy is I want anyone who comes into any of my classes, whether we are lifting weights or listening to our breath, is to experience my presence as one that is loving and kind and respects them as a human being. And I have found that that is harder than I thought it would be.
Mm. Yeah.
Right? Because, and not because I know anything about any of these people. I don't. They're just walking into my classes. So I'm not going to make the assumption that we believe the same things or we disagree about anything, but it's more like, I'm crabby, I'm tired, and how is that going to impact my mood? And do I really believe that God's presence in my day-to-day can shift me